It's very exciting to be here today. I have a lot of warmth in my heart for Sunshine Christian Academy. There's a lot of reasons. Obviously, this is the place, as Pastor said, that I was in school from the time I was in the 3rd grade until the time I was in the 9th grade. One of the Yeah, that's me on the far right. There we go. There are shorts under that shirt. Everybody needs to know that. That's good. I know I'm kicking the 2-color shoestrings too. I don't know if you guys still do that, but I was stylish. Is that the end of it, Ira? Are you getting more pain for me?
No idea. I have no idea.
I don't know anything about that. Okay, so when I think about Sunshine, actually, Sunshine was a place of firsts for me. It's not just a place I love because my mom is the principal here now and that I've got a rich history with it. I actually have quite a bit of experience from Sunshine, some lifetime firsts. One of the firsts that's really key is I got in my first fist fight at Sunshine Christian Academy. Yeah, and as a result of that fist fight, I had my first black eye and first broken hand from Sunshine Christian Academy. Something to be proud of. I actually spent the next day in hiding with my black eye on Miss Finney's couch. So I want to thank her publicly for allowing me to hide my shame of that next day. I also had my first kiss at Sunshine Christian Academy. Yeah, you're saying, what kind of school are they running here? And so just so you know, it makes me sound like I have some sort of prowess with the ladies. I was actually the hunted, not the hunter in that relationship. And the hunter was the pastor's daughter at the time. And so I had that to experience and remember fondly of Sunshine Christian Academy. But on a more serious note, one of the things that I experienced, another first from Sunshine Christian Academy, is this the first place that I was told and the first time that I discovered that I could actually be a good student. I had spent my academic career up to that time struggling a little bit. I spent the 2nd grade behind a partition separated from the other kids because I had more interest in amusing the people beside me than I did in discovering what great mind-expanding things were being taught at the chalkboard. But I got to come to Sunshine in 3rd grade, and because of the hard work of people like Mr. and Mrs. Torbett, who I had no idea were going to be here tonight, but I had their name written down to mention, Mrs. Hobson, who is here tonight, Mrs. Kearns, who was Miss Easton at the time, people that are still affiliated with the school that taught me and expanded my capability and had me leave Sunshine with the confidence that I could be a good student. And actually leave Sunshine to go to West Nassau High School and go from being what was supposed to be 10th grade average classes as a transfer to 11th grade honors classes in a day. I was able to skip a grade because of the work that I had done at Sunshine Christian Academy. And so, obviously, I care a lot about this school, and I think the highest compliment that anyone can pay a school like Sunshine Christian Academy is one that I pay them now, and that's that my son goes to school here. And it's not because I think my mom is going to take good care of him, or because I think they're just good people here, because I would have that as a prerequisite for any school that my son was going to attend. It's because I know he's going to get incredible academic preparation here, and he's proving that every day as he comes home from his classes. And my daughter is enrolled to come here next year in her first full year of school. And so I have a lot of belief in this school, and that's one of the reasons why it is such an incredible privilege to be here and an honor to speak to the graduating class of 2011. I'm going to spend a lot of time looking at these guys over the course of the next few minutes, and so I hope everyone else will forgive me. But what I have to say today is directed directly to you. And as I thought about and prayed about what I was going to be able to speak and share, I prayed, God, this is a huge opportunity. And as you think about people that are this age, coming into this phase of their life, over the course of the next 5 to 10 years, they're going to make the decisions that shape the rest of their lives. Everyone here knows that. They're going to make decisions about what their career is going to be, whether or not they're going to go to college and where they're going to go to college. And if they're fortunate enough, like I was, they're very likely to meet their mate as a result of that. They're going to choose a career that's going to take them different places around the world, and that's going to dictate where their children are born and what kind of world changers come out of their home. All of these decisions are going to be made in the next 5 years, 5 to 10. And so what do I say to you guys in a few minutes that can stick? That's the challenge, because you're not really thinking about what I'm saying right now. I didn't when I was in my graduation. And the chances of you guys remembering any of it are slim. I have a very hard time remembering. I tried to think about it, actually, in preparation for this. And in fact, the guy who spoke at my graduation said, I'm going to give $100 to anybody that can come back in 10 years Tell me what I talked about, and I have no clue. So I'm not going to try that. See, I saw Frank's eyes pick up. So as I prayed about it, God actually showed me a way that I can take you through 7 key principles for success. And I'm going to do it out of one chapter in the Bible. And so at the end of this, I don't want you to try to remember the 7 key principles of success, but I do want you to remember the one chapter of the Bible. And I want you guys to go back to this multiple times as you face the decisions that you're about to make, as you think about planning your life. And so it's one of my favorite chapters of the Bible. It's Proverbs chapter 3. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to work backwards through this chapter. I'm going to walk you guys through these 7 principles. So we're going to do that now. So anybody who has Bibles with you today? A few people, hopefully? Follow along. We're in Proverbs chapter 3. I'm going to start with verses 31 through 35. It says, "Do not envy a violent man, or choose any of his ways. For the Lord detests a perverse man, but takes the upright into his confidence. The Lord's curse is on the house of the wicked, but he blesses the home of the righteous. He mocks proud mockers, but gives grace to the humble. The wise inherit honor, but fools he holds up to shame." You're like, man, this is going to be a heavy graduation speech. It's true, though, if you think about what it says there. The principle found in that passage in the chapter is live like there are consequences. And that's an important message for young people today to hear, because you know what? Everything that you're getting from everyone else in the culture says live like there's no consequences. And that's 180 degrees reverse of what Jesus told us and what God would tell you and what you've been taught here. Live like there are consequences. The way that you live is going to choose the things that God lays out. He lays out choices there if you go back and look at it. You have to choose between repulsion or inclusion in his presence. You have to choose between blessing or curse on your home. You have to choose between mocking and grace from him specifically. And you have to choose between honor and shame. And the way that you guys live your life, you 7, here forward, is going to dictate which of those consequences you actually receive from him. And so, despite of what you see in movies, despite of what you hear in songs, despite of what television or media will tell you, there are consequences to the decisions that you're about to be making. And you have to live. The principle in that passage is live like you understand what they are. So that's number 1. Live like you have consequences. And if I can get through the other 6 that quickly, you guys will be very happy. All right, so we're going to look at verses 27 through 30 now. Verse 27 says, "Do not withhold good from those who deserve it when it's in your power to act. Do not say to your neighbor, 'Come back later, I'll give it to you tomorrow,' when you have it now with you. Do not plot harm against your neighbor who lives trustfully near you. Do not accuse a man for no reason when he's done you no harm." And so the principle in this one, in that passage, is to live unselfishly. That's the next big principle that you need to think about as you plan your life and as you live day to day. And there are 2 things God talks about in that context. He says, A, act when you have the opportunity to do good for somebody who deserves it. So that's the first. Go out of your way to help others. The Message Bible in this context says, never walk away from someone who deserves help. Your hand is God's hand to that person. And so live unselfishly. Have the ability to give of yourself. The second thing that he says there is, don't hurt your neighbor who's sitting there trusting you. And so what that means to me and what you should take away from it is don't harm others to get your way. Be unselfish. Make sure that your priority isn't yourself. I've got a mentor, a guy that I spend a lot of time with, and he is, I'm fortunate that he's a very well-published author in business and leadership. And he has a chapter in one of the books of his that actually drew me to a relationship with him. In that chapter, it's called An Orientation Towards Transcendence. And what that talks about is knowing that there is something bigger than you in the world. And as a graduate, that's one of the key things you need to understand coming out. In this moment, there's not much bigger than you in this world, and you should celebrate that and enjoy it. This is your graduation from high school. It's a big passage. But as soon as you get turned loose, there's a big world out there. And a lot of people living in it that don't have this orientation towards the understanding that there's actually something bigger than them in it. And in that chapter, he talks about 2 important character traits. This living unselfishly. 2 important character traits that you can have that will set you up for success that relate to living unselfishly. And they are, number 1, to be able, and number 2, to be willing to be inconvenienced. And that's key. And that's what the key to living unselfishly is. Are you at the core of who you are in a day-to-day person, in your home, with your parents today, with your little sisters, your big brothers, with people who come up to you and ask for something? Are you able and are you willing to be inconvenienced? You have to ask yourself that question. If you're not, you can ask your parents that question. If they say you're not, then know that that's an area of your life that you need to work on if you really want to be successful. So we're going to move to the next one, the fifth, or the third, I guess, if I'm going backwards. Is in verse 21 and 26. So I'm going to read that to you now. It says, "My son, preserve sound judgment and discernment. Do not let them out of your sight. There will be life for you, an ornament of grace on your neck. Then you will go on your way in safety, and your foot will not stumble. When you lie down, you'll not be afraid. When you lie down, your sleep will be sweet. Have no fear of sudden disaster or the ruin that overtakes the wicked, for the Lord will be your confidence and keep your feet from being snared." And so the key principle to take out of that, he says, "My son, preserve sound judgment and discernment." The key principle for success in this is to be deliberate, but not fearful when you're making big decisions. Let's talk about what it means to be deliberate and not fearful. He says, preserve sound judgment, preserve discernment. And if you look up the translation of discernment, in that particular word, the word that was used, actually meant like understanding a foreign language. If you think about what it takes to understand a foreign language, if someone's speaking Spanish to you, or Japanese, or any other language, you actually have to understand the context of what's being said, not just the words. I could write you a letter in Spanish. I actually could. And you could take out a dictionary and you could translate every word. And you'd have no idea what I was talking about. With a key, you'd still have no idea. Because you miss the context, the intent that's going on in the conversation. And that's a key to understanding language, is that words have a million different reasons. Have you ever received an email or a text from someone and you took it completely out of context because you didn't have the intent? Or you didn't get the message right? I know in the office world that happens a lot, to the point where I've actually killed email in my office. You can't send it to somebody inside. It has to be somebody who's not there. It makes people talk for a change. But understanding the intent, understanding what's going on in the environment is a key to being deliberate in your decision making. You have to ask yourself, ask the question, what's the context? What's at stake in this decision? And that's how you preserve discernment when you're making decisions. And when you understand what's at stake, when you really think about, okay, I'm trying to pick between a number 1 and a number 2 at Wendy's. There's very little at stake in this decision. So you can just proceed, right? I'm trying to pick which college I'm going to go to. Well, you know, that has some implications. It has implications in where I'm going to live and where I'm going to be employed most likely afterwards, because typically your first job has something to do with the college that you attended. It's probably going to have to do with the type of person I meet, the type of person that I end up being in a romantic or marriage relationship with. There's more to just, do I want to live in that city, which is the way most people decide where they're going to go to college. And so make sure that you preserve discernment and think about the context of the decision that you're making. And once you've done that, once you have that context very fresh in your mind, there are 2 keys to making good decisions. Number 1, make sure that you're adequately prepared. This is the deliberate part. Do it intentionally. Are you adequately prepared? Have you done your research? Have you sought guidance from people who are wiser than you? Remember the last one. Have you gone out and asked questions? Have you prayed? Are you adequately prepared? And in addition to the preparation for a decision, the second thing you have to think about, and this takes maturity, and this is going to be really hard, and it's hard for me still, is you have to be able to step out of yourself for a moment and say, am I in the right frame of mind to make this decision? Because that's being deliberate. Think about things like impulse buys, right? If you see something and you want it really badly, and you have a credit card in your pocket, and you buy it, and 2 days later you're kicking yourself because you're not even picking it up, but you're glad you have it. You could have passed on that item. And if you waited a day, if you'd gotten out of the frame of mind that said, I have to have it now, and given yourself a little time, you could have preserved discernment and sound judgment. And that's just buying something. There are many decisions that you're going to make when you're in a very risky frame of mind. There was a pastor that I had one time when I lived in Gainesville, and he did a message that stuck with me. He said, there are moments where you shouldn't make decisions, and he called them HALT moments, H-A-L-T. H-A-L-T means stop, right? It's if you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. H-A-L-T, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. If you find yourself in that context when you're making decisions, at the very least, be very careful. Because that's a framework, that's a mindset that can get you in a lot of trouble. And so, when you think about being deliberate, it's understanding the context, it's also being very intentional about these two things. The Message Bible for this passage says, "Dear friend, guard clear thinking and common sense with your life. Don't for a minute lose sight of them." Clear thinking. That's the question you need to ask yourself as you're making decisions. A, am I prepared to make it? B, am I thinking clearly on this? And that's where you can bring in some people from outside to say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. How do you feel about this? What do you think? The other part of that, though, is make your decisions deliberately and then proceed without fear. And it's important that you guys understand that that's part of the message God says. He says, I'll be your confidence. And he says it in the same context. So this is related to that. When you make decisions this way, I'll be your confidence and I'll keep your foot from being snared. And when you look up the word confidence here, it's assurance. It's like a legal term. It's the fallback. If this happens, then I will. Right? In a contract. And so that's God's way of saying, hey, if you'll live your life this way, if you'll make decisions by being deliberate, by making sure that you've done your research, that you've prayed, you've asked me, and that you've made sure that you're in the frame of mind to actually make key decisions. If you will, then I will. You have assurances from Him that He's going to be your confidence and keep your foot from being snared. And I can tell you that you have to be able to make decisions. You cannot be paralyzed in fear. Don't let the instruction from me that says to be deliberate be misunderstood as saying take a long time to make decisions. You don't have that luxury many times. But you got to be in a state of mind that allows you to make them. And you got to be prepared. There's a preparedness that comes by always being in a connection to God and your relationship with Him and other things that you can do in your life to be prepared to make decisions at any time. And so make sure that you understand that you need to be deliberate in your decision making. But second, you got to be bold once you've done that and proceed, because you have assurances. Not that you're going to be successful, but that God's going to hold you up and keep your feet from being snared. All right, so now we're moving on. We're going to go to verses 11 through 20 of what chapter in Proverbs, Frank? Chapter 3. Good. There's 7 of you guys. There's 7 points. I'm going to ask you each one at the end. We'll do it up here. That way you feel better. You got them all so far? All right, 11 through 20. It says, "My son, do not despise the Lord's discipline, and do not resent His rebuke. Because the Lord disciplines those He loves, as a father the son He delights in. Blessed is the man who finds wisdom. Blessed is the man who gains understanding. For she is more profitable than silver, and yields better returns than gold. She is more precious than rubies, and nothing you desire can compare with her. Long life is in her right hand. In her left hand are riches and honor. Her ways are pleasant ways, and all her paths are peace. She is a tree of life to those who embrace her. Those who lay hold of her will be blessed. By wisdom the Lord laid the foundations of the earth. By understanding He set the heavens in their place. By His knowledge the deeps were divided, and the clouds let drop the dew." It says, get wisdom, get understanding. And so the principle that I want you to have in this, in verses 11 through 20 of Proverbs chapter 3, I'm going to come to you for this one. Just kidding. She freaked out. Is number 1, stay teachable. Number 2, pray for intelligence. And number 3, work for mastery. That's what that passage says. So let's break that down. First, stay teachable. Don't despise discipline, it says. Don't despise the Lord's discipline or correction. If you think of what discipline means, it's correction and instruction. I had some great discipline from Mr. Rudy and Mrs. Lori Johnson growing up. And it came in the context of correction, but it also came with instruction. And God is faithful to teach you that way. And staying teachable is one of the key things for someone that's in the age range of 18 to, well, I'm 34, so 34 at least. Because you're going to come out and you're going to go into a workforce at some point after college or even immediately after this. And you're going to be put in situations where you don't know anything and you feel like you do. And that's tough. It's tough for people like me who employ you guys. And it's tough for you guys because you're frustrated by the experience. But staying teachable isn't about paying your dues as a kid. Because a key to success This didn't say, anybody under 18, don't despise the Lord's discipline. It says, my son, and hopefully you consider yourself that, or my daughter, at any age, don't despise the Lord's discipline or correction. And there's a way that you can stay teachable. There's actually a key to this that you can take from here moving forward, and that's to put yourself from now on, from this day of your life forward, into the position of a learner in your life. And how do you do that? You do that by taking on mentors who can tell you what to do. People who can pull you to the side and correct you and instruct you. And you choose. You're at an age now where you get to choose whether or not that happens. But God lays out some incredible rewards that we're going to look at in a second about what happens when you do that. You get to choose from now on whether or not you want to be teachable. You get to choose whether or not from now on you're successful. And those are key correlations. And so give yourself the privilege of having mentors. And a lot of times people have the mentorship thing wrong. They think, all right, I got to go out and find somebody I want to be when I grow up. That's not what a mentor is. It's really hard to find that person if you look at it that way. But if you start looking at areas of your life that you want to improve, and you start looking at people around you that have a little bit more on the ball in those areas than you do, just pick areas. Say, man, I really like the way that you are so disciplined about how you use your time. Or, man, I saw the way that you put together that presentation that was given. Or I saw the way that you crunched those numbers in this analysis. Or I saw the way that you coached your team. It doesn't matter. The things that you care about. Go to someone in that category and say, teach me. Correct what I'm doing wrong. Instruct me on what you're doing right. Stay teachable from this point forward. Have a mentor. Have somebody in your life that has that position. At least one somebody. I have several. I can tell you right now that I need mentors now more than I ever have. I've been put into situations. I'm in a situation now at work. 3 weeks ago, they came to me and said, we want you to continue to be the president of the company that you're running, but the board would like you to go run a multi-billion-dollar acquisition project. I've never done anything like that. It's in trouble. We need somebody to come in and lead it. And so the first thing I did was start finding people who are really good at this and say, correct me, instruct me. I am lost. And if I went in saying, well, I'm pretty good at what I do, you guys are going to need to fall in line, right? I wouldn't be in that position for very long. And so stay teachable. That's the first part. But there were two other parts to that. The second was pray for wisdom, right? Seek wisdom. And wisdom in that context means intelligence. It really does. It means the divine capacity to learn and apply understanding or knowledge. And I don't want you guys to think that you're born with the IQ that you have and it is what it is for the rest of your life, because honestly, God can expand your mind. If you read some of the things that were written by some of the people who were illiterate at the time, things that were said, messages that were delivered by the disciples of Jesus, don't think that He can't expand your intelligence. And I can tell you guys, and this is not an exaggeration, from the time I was before your age until this day I'm standing before you now, I asked Him for it before I walked up to this podium. I've asked for wisdom every day. It's to the point now where it's habitual. I'm about to get into a call with someone that I respect or someone that I need to impress, or I'm about to walk into a situation that's really ugly, and I say, God, give me wisdom. Give me tact. These are things He actually tells you to ask for. More than 50 times in the book of Proverbs alone. Seek wisdom. In the next chapter, one verse says, seek wisdom with an exclamation point. That's the verse. There's something to that. And so I can tell you that every day of my life I've asked God for that. And I need it right now. And I've been asking for it ever since I was your age and before. And so seek wisdom, because He can expand your ability to process and to apply the knowledge that you have. But there's a second part to that. He says, blessed is the man who finds wisdom. Blessed is the man who finds understanding. Understanding in this context, if you look up the word that was used in that scripture, it means mastery. It's skill. And so this is where your effort comes into play. God will expand your ability to process knowledge. He'll expand your ability to apply it. And if you stay teachable, you're going to have people that give you more and more wisdom, more and more instruction, and correct things that you're doing wrong. But the beautiful thing about this equation is He doesn't leave you out of it. It's not, God, have a light bulb go off over my head so I can be a baby genius when I go to work tomorrow. It's, blessed is the man who finds wisdom. Blessed is the man who finds understanding, mastery. There's a book called Outliers. It's a book about what makes great people great. And it takes people like Bill Gates, like Wayne Gretzky, people who are the best at things that they've done, and breaks down what was the secret to their success. And everybody, if you talk to them and you see their interviews, it says, well, I got a lucky break. You know, I was just, it was the right place, right time. But we know better when you see somebody that's just incredible. If you look at Tiger Woods and the way that he played golf up to a few years ago, it has a lot to do with mastery and the investment that they've made. And in this book, it breaks down the keys to success for each one of those people is that they reached 10,000 hours of the activity that they've done way before anybody else did. Bill Gates, his opportunity came when his mom's school, like Sunshine Christian Academy for me, if he was a student, decided, hey, we're going to buy one of those newfangled computers. And it filled up the whole basement of a building they were in. And she didn't know what she was going to do with it. The book talks about that. But he started writing programming from the time that he was an adolescent. He just wrote it and wrote code, trial and error, failure after failure after failure after failure. By the time he was graduating from high school, he had over 10,000 hours of programming knowledge. At a time when people couldn't get access to a computer, he had 10,000 hours. And so the lesson in that story, the moral in that story is that you've got to pour yourself into something. You need to pray and ask for wisdom. You need to be teachable, find mentors. But at the end of the day, the third part, the third leg on that stool, if it's not going to crumble on you, is that you've got to research, you've got to read, you've got to explore, you've got to experiment. You've got to pour hours of your time, thousands of your dollars, into expanding your capability in the area that you choose to pursue. And it needs to be something you love, because if you don't love it, you're not going to do that. That's going to be what sets you apart. People say, find something you're passionate about and you'll be successful. That's what they mean. It's not like, well, I really love sitting on the couch and I can be a great couch sitter. It means it's going to take real passion for you to actually be able to invest what it takes to be successful. Do you get what that means? To get to that level of mastery, put those 10,000 hours in before someone else did, to have the opportunity to be successful, you got to pour yourself into it. All right? So that was the principle there. Be teachable. Pray for wisdom. Seek understanding. Seek mastery. And what I love about this passage is the promises that God makes in it. I read them through, and I'm not going to read them again, but I'm going to highlight some of them. God promises incredible return on your investment of that time. It says, blessed is the man who gains understanding, because its yield is greater than gold. If anyone understands what's happened in the marketplace in the last 10 years, if you had money in gold, good for you. Bad for all of us who are in the stock market instead. It says the yield is better than gold for your skill. It says that you're going to have long life, riches, and honor. That you're going to have peace, that you're going to have blessing. I'm not making any kind of false connections there. That's written in the context of that scripture. Get those things, you get these things with it. So make sure that you stay teachable. Make sure that you allow yourself the opportunity to be successful by seeking wisdom and pouring yourself into skill, mastery, and understanding. All right, we've only got a couple more left. Verses 9 through 10, we're almost at the beginning of the chapter. Verses 9 through 10 say, honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of your crops. Then your barns will be overfilled. They'll be filled to overflowing, and your vats will brim over with new wine. The key lesson there, and everybody's like, oh man, I thought Pastor wasn't talking. We weren't going to hear about tithing tonight. I was going to get away. Not that Pastor talks about tithing a lot, but the key principle in this is keep money and possessions in their place by tithing. You guys need to be tithers. And I want you guys to understand, and you've heard this before, but I want to try to break it down in a way that hopefully it'll get in. God doesn't need your money. He really doesn't. I mean, he's God, right? So, I mean, he can make bread if he needs it. He can make things happen. He doesn't need your money. He can create the world. He didn't buy the world. You know, start to think about it. This is good for you. Because if you think about that, the way that you live your life, once you graduate from high school, and once you graduate from college, but even through college, the way that you live your life mostly is you work for money, right? I mean, I know I wake up in the morning, I go to work, I travel all over the world, I come home at the end of the day, and if I had a choice, I love what I do, but if I had a choice, I'd work on cars with my dad, I'd play softball for this church, which I'm on your team, by the way, Pastor. I can get a letter from my pastor that says I do go to church. I'd rather be home with my incredible kids and my wife, rather be playing in the yard, rather be taking rides with them in old cars. These are all things I really like to do. I'd rather be surfing, or rather be traveling for fun. I go to work for money, right? And so you invest so much of your time in the pursuit of things and money, of a lifestyle. What tithing is it's a weekly, a bi-weekly, a monthly reminder that, okay, wait, I just spent all that time chasing this. Now God, here it is because you're more important than that. That's what tithing is. That's why he says do it. It's not because he's going to run out of cash. It's because you're going to run after something that isn't right. And the longer you go without that check, without that writing that check, literally, or that mental check in your direction that says, wait. I did all this for money, but God, here it is. Here is some of the first fruits of my time. It's actually you that's more important. Because I promise you, if you live your life in the pursuit of money or things, you will have an empty existence. And it doesn't make a lot of sense at the age that you guys are because you haven't had the chance to have a lot of it yet. But I can tell you how, and this will sound like I have a lot of it, and I wouldn't describe myself as someone who does, but I can tell you how much more blessed what I do have is because it's in the right place in my life. Because I'll be the first to tell you I tithe. And thank God that I do. All right. And so when you think about that reset of priority, what he promises there is the coolest promise. One of the coolest promises around tithing that I think is sometimes taken out of context. It says, his promise in return is that your barns are going to be filled to overflowing and your wineskins are going to burst with new wine. And you're like, okay, well, I don't have a barn and I don't drink wine. So it's a promise for drunks and farmers. Right? And that's not at all what's going on. If you think about what that means, you have to build a barn. And if you're about to bring in a new harvest of wine, you go out and collect a bunch of wineskins or boxes to store things in. What God is saying here is, I'm going to bless you with more than you can plan for. That's what the promise says. Because you planned, you built those barns saying, well, if I did really well, I'd get this much. I'm going to overflow that. And if you're about to get wine, you go, well, I probably need 12 wineskins because that's about how much we normally get. And you're going to bust them. And so God's going to bless you with more than you can plan for if you'll keep this key promise to keep these things in the right place by being a tither. All right? All right, we're down to two more. Verses 5 through 8. And what chapter of Proverbs? Chapter 3? You did not just have to look and ask somebody. Okay. Man. Remember that be teachable part? No, just kidding. All right, verses 5 through 8. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not to your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. Don't be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil. This will bring health to your body and nourishment to your bones. And so the key principle in this, and this is a principle that I have absolutely lived by, is make no decisions without God's input. It says, in all your ways acknowledge him. Trust in the Lord and acknowledge him. And acknowledge means to listen in that context. Just listen. He's talking. It doesn't mean, try to prompt him into action. He's speaking to you now. He wants to give you direction as you guys pray about what you're going to do next. It says, in all your ways acknowledge him. The Message Bible, I love the way it says this. It says, listen to God's voice in everything you do, everywhere you go. He's the one who will keep you on track. Don't assume you know it all. Run to God with an exclamation point. And I can't say it any better than that. Make sure that you run to God. My experience with this has been incredible. I don't make any major decision for my career, for my family, without going to God first. And I don't just pray and say, it feels okay. I make God slap me in the face with an answer. And I do that through the Word. We call it his living Word for a reason, because he will answer your questions of him through insight in the Word. There was an opportunity I had when I was a young product manager. I moved my way up from a marketing assistant, which was truly what it sounds like. My job was to stuff envelopes and send them in the mail. And that's what I did for a living at $18,500 a year when I started right out of college, which at the time, that was still below what everyone else made. that was my job with a 4-year degree. That's what I was doing. And I had opportunity came, and I took advantage of it, and had been given some responsibility to run a product line, and had some success with that product line. And so recruiters started to call me, and I had a call to go to a big company based out of Memphis. And it was an incredible opportunity. It was literally, I had been making more than the 18 at that time, but it was literally twice what I was making at that time as an offer. And it was to work with a behemoth of a company, and it just looked like an incredible group. I went, I interviewed, I loved them, they loved me, and it was a beautiful opportunity. And so the recruiter's like, hey, you did the interview, you were serious enough to come, the offer is obviously rich compared to what you make now, sign on the dotted line. And I said, hey man, I am gonna sign the dotted line, but I cannot do this without praying about it. He's like, okay, how long does that take? Pray. I was like, well, I'm gonna need a couple days. And he said, I'm gonna try to hold him off for a couple days. He said, but you gotta be feeling like you're gonna do this. I was like, man, if it's up to me, I'd sign right now. And it is up to me, but I gotta hear that this is the right thing to do, because this is a big decision. He was confused. So he gave me the couple days, and I prayed, and my wife and I were in bed, and we were sleeping. And I was woken up out of a dead sleep, and was like, all right, it's time to, I'm gonna give you your answer, so read. So I opened up the Bible, and I got into a passage where God was actually talking to I think it was Abraham. And he said, don't go to Memphis. That's what it said in the Bible. It says, don't go to Memphis. You'll have constant heartache there. I was like, good gracious, but Jill, wake up. We can't go to Memphis. She's like, okay, well, we're not going to Memphis. So I called the recruiter the next day, and look it up. Just do a concordance search for Memphis, so you know I'm not kidding. But I called the recruiter the next day. You can imagine this conversation. I was like, man, I got to say no. He's like, I have told them that you're coming. I was like, I didn't tell you I was coming. He goes, but no, it was a lock. They wanted you. We stopped looking at other candidates. You got to take this job. I'm angry with you now. I've been robbed, because he gets a commission for that decision. And I didn't go. And I guarantee that I wouldn't have the opportunity that I have today to be the leader of the business that I'm in, having stayed there, if I'd gone to Memphis. And I don't know what was in store for me there, but thank God for protecting me from it by a don't go to Memphis at 2 o'clock in the morning in the Bible. But God will give you that literal direction if you'll hold until you hear from Him. And His timing is different than recruiter's timing. And it's different than your timing. But don't make a decision without acknowledging God and trusting in Him. And knowing that you don't know it all. Everything that I knew said that was the right decision. But everything I knew didn't know that literally only a few years later, at the age of 30, that the board was going to ask me to be the president of the business that I would work for all that time. I didn't know what was coming. I was as surprised as everyone else, and they were surprised. All right, and that takes us to the last part of the chapter, which is the first part of the chapter. It's verses 1 through 4. It says, my son, do not forget my teaching, but keep my commands in your heart. For they will prolong your life many years and bring you prosperity. Let love and faithfulness never leave you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Then you will win favor and a good name in the sight of God and man. And this one is pretty straightforward. It's remember what you were taught here. Lock this stuff in. Because you guys have been given an incredible advantage versus other graduates of high school. In the city of Callahan, in the state of Florida, in the country of the United States, you have a leg up right now. Foundational. It says, lock this stuff in your heart, carry it around your neck. Remember what you were taught here about who God is. Remember what you were taught here, what you learned here about who you are in God. Remember very specifically what you learned about His love for you and His faithfulness to you. Remember who He called you to love. And remember to what He called you to be faithful. Because other kids didn't get that. Other kids aren't leaving their high school graduations with the foundation and the head start that you have. The promises that He gives in those 3 scriptures, those 3 verses are long life, prosperity, favor. And I can't tell you how important favor is. A good name before God and man. These are things that I'm working for every day. And I got a foundation put in me from being a Sunshine Christian Academy Eagle that you guys share with me, that you can choose to walk away from, or you can hide into the depths of your heart, like it says to do there, and proceed. And those are the lessons that I have for you. Those are the foundations. Those principles will help you lead a successful life. It'll also help you define what a successful life is, by the way, which is a whole other experiment. But if you can remember anything out of those 7 principles for success, remember that they're all located in one chapter of the Bible, in Proverbs chapter 3. And that if one chapter of the Bible has that much in it for you as a graduate, imagine what can happen if you spend the rest of your life going to it for answers. If you dig into other parts of it. It'll be incredible, I promise you. I wish you guys a lot of success. I'll be praying for you, literally, that God will give you direction in these areas over the course of the next few weeks and months as you make big decisions. And thank you for listening.